do every Monday at noon Pacific time. All these recordings, slides, and exercises and audios are going to be archived in our members area, and then all these recordings are also placed on my YouTube channel for free that you can go see anytime you want from a mobile phone or a tablet or anywhere that you have access to the internet at youtube.com/user/Paul Hoyt. The reasons I do these are because I know that being a successful CEO and small business owner can be a great experience, but I also know that it's tough. You need education, training, tools, and team in order to be successful, and I want you to get to know me, because when you get to know me, you'll know that I really do care about you. First and most importantly, I care about you, and I want you to succeed in every area of your life, whatever that means to you. I want you to find the greatness, the happiness, the divinity within yourself, and then remember it, embrace it, and live it every day as I try to do. My passion is to increase the survival rate, accelerate the growth rate, and reduce the struggle rate of businesses in America, and my vision is to help millions of CEOs and entrepreneurs accelerate their business growth and enjoy greater harmony and balance in their lives. I want them to grow and thrive and blast past survive, and you can help them and help me by spreading the word. If you get some value from these webinars, please tell your community. Post something on Facebook, post something on LinkedIn, and invite people to check out all of these. It's now, after the end of today, 65 one-hour presentations that are available on the YouTube channel. The odds are pretty good that if somebody's in business for themselves or even a professional and executive in business, that they're going to find some value in these free programs. Our agenda is always an in-depth discussion of a business success principle, and I offer closing remarks and special offers and an invitation for next week's program. And then we have open Q&A and coaching. So anytime you have a question or want to add a little bit to the discussion of today's subject, please do that, and we open it up to anything that you want to talk about. During the course of this, I invite you to join us at the Brilliant Business Groups on both Facebook and LinkedIn. The URLs are on your screen. At Facebook, it's just search for groups, and it's the Brilliant Business Group. We set up a special link at bit.ly Brilliant Business Group online so that you can find the LinkedIn ones, because sometimes it's a little hard to find groups on LinkedIn. And I invite you to join us there because I post a business success principle of the day 4 times a week, usually Monday through Thursday evenings, on both Facebook and LinkedIn. And then every morning I publish an energy of the day message, a little motivational, inspirational message on Facebook every morning, and in my blog. I think we're up to morning number 445 mornings in a row right now, where you can make comments, ask questions, share insights, and specify your takeaways and get support from the community around you. And if you haven't done so already, I invite you to look up and like my business page on Facebook. Today's topic is on the power of habit, why we do what we do in life and in business, based upon the book by Charles Duhigg in 2012, which was voted by numerous people as being one of the best business books of the year in 2012. As always, I want to relate this topic to one or more of the key performance areas of business. One of my distinctions is that I invite CEOs and entrepreneurs to focus on the different areas of business and focus on being competent, even excellent, in each one of the 7 key performance areas of business. And this presentation today is square about leadership. It's up to you as the leader of your company and as the leader of yourself to form and manage your own personal habits and to form and manage the habits of your business. There are 5 primary different business environments that we support here at our company: the startup, the steady growth, the rapid expansion, the turnaround, and the exit. And forming habits is important for every single one of these different classes of business. And when you're a startup, it's important for you to develop good habits for yourself and other people at the business itself. When you're in steady growth, you want to accentuate the good habits and modify them over time. Rapid expansion and turnaround modes are both times of incredible change, so it's very important for you to watch your habits there. And you need to change a lot of habits when it comes to exit mode, because you want to prepare the business for being acquired by somebody else, or at least want to prepare your successors for taking over for you. So there's a lot of habits that need to be changed there. We're going to focus a lot on habits today. We're going to talk on what are habits. We'll talk about habits and the brain, the habit loop, changing habits, your habits and business, and then we're going to sum it all up to the bottom line. So first, let's talk about what are habits. Habits are learned behaviors that are repeated regularly. They are normally formed as a result of a lot of repetition. They are typically unconscious and automatic, and usually activated in response to some kind of a cue. They're typically triggered. So they are these subconscious programs running deep in our brain that are activated whenever particular things happen. It could be an external cue, such as the sun coming up in the morning, or somebody saying something to us, or it can be an internal cue as well, of when our thoughts go to a particular place. When we start to feel a particular way, we may activate one of these subconscious programs that's running in the form of a habit. They're usually very persistent and reliable, and that means that they will, once formed, they will stay literally for our entire lives. I think some of them are permanent and some of them become semi-permanent. The book actually makes the point that habits can never be changed, or never be, never changed, but can never be removed. They can only be altered or changed. And I kind of disagree with that. I think that some habits are only semi-permanent, especially even bad habits, even addictions can in fact be eliminated or removed. That's certainly my personal experience, and I've seen other people go through that too. And of course, habits may be positive or negative habits. Positive habits, by my definition, are those that increase your vitality, your enjoyment of life, increase the relationships that you have with other people in a very positive way. And bad habits are those things that you do which really cause you challenges in the long run. Some examples about bad habits might be procrastination, fidgeting around and just being nervous all the time. Getting angry at other people can be a very, very bad habit and damage relationships, for a very long time. Nail biting is an example of a physical habit that can cause you a lot of problems over time. And, of course, there's addictions, smoking, drinking, addictions to drugs and other nasty substances. And we can have addictions in all kinds of different areas of our life. It's not just about substances, but sometimes it's about behaviors too. But fortunately, we can also have really good habits like cleanliness, like exercise, like being courteous to other people. My father's on the call, and I'm grateful for the way that he taught me to say please and thank you, and to open the door for ladies, and to be quiet when it was time to be quiet. Helped me form a lot of good habits early in life that paid great dividends as I grew. Getting to work on time can be a good habit, and conversely to that, being late or repetitively tardy can be a very bad habit. Driving responsibly is a very, very good habit. Staying in your lane, watching the speed limits, watching the traffic around you are habits that you can live by, and in that particular case, like many addictions, if you don't have the habit of driving responsibly, it can really screw up your life. Habits occur on several different levels. Personally, which is where I mostly think about habits, about personal habits. But one of the points that Charles made in his book was that as a business, we also have habits that we typically call them routines or part of the company culture or our processes and procedures, but there are habits in your business, the way that your people are used to responding to specific cues and triggers. And we as a society can also have habits. So in society, we call them societal norms, which is the way generally that most people behave. For example, a habit of our society here in America might be Super Bowl Sunday, where almost everybody watches the Super Bowl. Another habit might be voting, although that habit seems to be decreasing over time. So it's useful to think about your habits on the personal level, your habits in your business, and your habits in society. The title of today's presentation, or at least the tagline, was Build a Stronger Business and Build a Better You. So I want you to think about habits not only on the personal basis, but also on the business basis as well. One of the really fascinating things that this book pointed out to me that I guess I'd heard several different times from a lot of different ways, but they really talked about habits in the brain, how habits are formed as neural connections and pathways in the basal ganglia, in the lizard brain itself, deep down in the primal aspect of our brain. It's not the same place as we normally have memories, and not the same place that we have as conscious thought. It's rather our primal learning center. And one of the great points the book made was that he said habits were the brain's way of conserving energy and acting very quickly. So the analogy he used is that your brain is, by instinct, very used to creating its own internal programs so that it doesn't have to think things through all the time, that it can conserve energy. We don't have to think about tying our shoes. We don't have to think about, taking the dishes to the counter or the sink in the kitchen. We don't have to think about the right way to drive. We don't have to think about, the courtesy and the manners from other people. We only have to put some mental effort into things when we are seeking to form new habits and when we are exploring things that we haven't explored before. Once we have learned something, it goes into the habit centers of our brain and resides there. And in that way, it's the brain's way of naturally conserving energy and allows us to act very quick. So one of the great analogies in this book, the great stories they talked about, was a great football coach named Tony Dungy. And one of the reasons he was such a great football coach is his focus on instilling habits into his players and practice so that they could respond very, very quickly. They didn't have to think things through because they had, through the power of repetition, driven these practiced responses to specific cues deep down into their brain so that they could act a millisecond faster than somebody else because of the power of habits when it came to playing professional football. There's lots of great stories in this book, but the one that really sticks out to me is the case of Eugene. I forget Eugene's last name. I think it's actually listed in the book. But Eugene had a case of spinal meningitis, or viral meningitis, that impacted an area of his brain where his learning centers were and where his memory was. They had to perform some radical surgery to essentially go in and remove that part of the brain where this nasty infection was. And as a result, Eugene didn't have any short-term memory. He couldn't remember that if he talked to you 15 seconds ago, one of the challenges that he had was he couldn't remember whether or not he ate breakfast. So 4 or 5 times a day, he would get triggered and think that it was time to eat breakfast and go and eat breakfast, and there was no conscious memory to tell him that, you shouldn't be hungry or that you've already eaten breakfast 3 or 4 times today, and he would go do that. What they found was with Eugene that he was still able to form habits. Even though he had no conscious memory and the active learning centers of his brain had been removed, he was still able to form habits deep down in the root of his brain. And it was really fascinating. It really helped me understand about how automatic our brains are when it comes to forming habits. In our brain, there's this thing called the basal ganglia, which has also been called the lizard brain. It is the earliest and earliest part of our brain that was formed during evolution and the primal centers of our brain. That's where habits go, and that's where habits reside. So your habits are formed in a different part of the brain than your conscious memory, and they're formed automatically on the basis of repetition and passion. He introduces a concept in the book called the habit loop, where a habit starts with a specific cue that triggers a specific routine that comes up with a specific reward, and then the whole thing gets started over and over again. Now, as our psychologist and psychiatrist friends will tell you, there are some different sequences to this. There's classical conditioning, where we have a cue and then if we have a reward, a routine associated with that, we get a reward. And sometimes in operant conditioning, we just have a reward that seems to spring out of nowhere, and we figure out that it's the routine that generated the reward, and then we can get cued into the routine almost any time that we think about that specific reward. But this is the loop: the cue, then the routine, then the reward. And all of this habit loop is fueled by cravings. So the amount of energy and passion that you have towards the reward, the feelings that you get when you experience the reward, the passion that you have towards that reward are what fuel the habit and fuel the generation of the habit and fuel the longevity of the habit as well. Let me give you some examples about how that works. Pepsodent is one of the examples that he has in the book. There were lots and lots of toothpaste out there, but somebody decided to change the formula of Pepsodent, and they put a little tingle in it. They put a little minty substance in that, so that now not only would you get the experience of having some dental hygiene and clean breath, but you got this tingle associated with it, and that tingle became incredibly habit-forming. It became a craving because it was such an interesting, energetic experience to have this minty tingle in your mouth that you really started craving Pepsodent. The tingle became the craving behind the habit of brushing your teeth. McDonald's, as it turns out, specially engineers their fries so that they will melt in your mouth and give you an immediate sense of salt and grease into your mouth when you have a McDonald's French fry. So they increase the craving for French fries and thereby the craving for McDonald's by having them melt in your mouth and specifically engineering the food to deliver that particular experience as quickly as possible. There are addictive substances that also accelerate the cravings. In the worst cases, the addictive substances may actually remove, either physically or certainly psychologically, your ability to experience the result of that addiction in any other way. For example, when somebody becomes addicted to heroin, heroin delivers an experience of peace of mind and of relaxation very quickly, but it has this nasty, nasty part of it that almost removes your ability to relax in other ways because it is so powerful. Some people think that they just can't even relax at all without a drink, or they can't relax at all without a cigarette, because the addictive substance has really accelerated the craving in a particular way and almost removed from your conscious intention the ability to satisfy that craving in any other way. Curiously, on the business side, by the way, I think sales almost does the same thing. Whenever you land a deal, it becomes a wonderful, wonderful experience, especially if you're in the business where you have, you don't land every deal. Maybe it's 1 out of every 10 deals or 3 out of every 10 deals. And when they start coming in random fashion, whenever you close that business and get that check and get that signed contract, I think it can be incredibly, at least habit-forming, if not addicting, and it is, and put forth a tremendous amount of craving. As it turns out, our cravings are really expanded when it comes to random positive reward. Random positive reward, like we see during sales, is even more addicting or habit-forming than a constant tingle or a constant melt in your mouth experience with French fries, or a constant shift of energy that you have, or a change in your physical experience that you have when it comes to addictive substances. So when it comes to changing habits and forming habits, it is about changing the cues, changing your routines, changing the rewards that you have, or changing the craving that you have. Let's take a look at each one of these individually. Sometimes to change habits or eliminate negative habits, you can simply eliminate the cue. For example, don't go to the bar anymore. If you want to cut back on beers and cut back on your drinking, then don't go to a bar and don't hang around people who are drinking. If you can eliminate the cue of having the bottle in front of you, or having other people around you who are encouraging you to have that drink, then you can essentially do away with the habit because you've eliminated the cue for the habit. You can likewise, you can increase the frequency and the strength if you increase the triggers of good habits. For example, hanging around people who like to exercise. If you decide that you want to develop an exercise program or a better eating program, getting yourself an exercise buddy or a weight watching buddy can be really helpful to you because you're hanging around people who can increase the triggers around eating healthy and exercising well. And it's very, very important to know your cues. One of the points that the book made very powerfully was understand your cues. When you see that you have a bad habit or you're trying to form a good habit, then one of the things that you can do is really understand what triggers that within you. We talked about Eugene earlier, the guy who had the spinal meningitis and had the learning centers of his brain removed. What they found was that one of the cues that he had was when a ray of sunlight came in through the blinds, he was triggered to go eat breakfast. And with no memory, of course, that he'd already done that 2 or 3 times during the day. So one of the ways that they began to control that habit with him was when his wife noticed that he had had breakfast, she closed the blinds. And when she was able to close the blinds, it eliminated the trigger of the light streaming in through the blinds, and it really cut down on the frequency with which he would go make himself bacon and eggs and eat breakfast. So it's very important for you to know your cues and understand what is triggering the routine that is forming your particular habit. And speaking of the routine, another way that you can change your habits is to change the routine. In fact, the book calls this the golden rule of habits. And it is about the only way to change habits when you can't change the cues. And the book makes the point that it's easier to form a replacement habit than eliminate an old one. In fact, the book makes the point that you can never replace a habit, that it's always there deep down in your memory. That's not my experience, however. So it's one of the points that I disagree with the book. But they say that it's far easier to form a replacement habit than eliminate an old one. And here's some examples. Gum instead of cigarettes. If you find that you need some shift of energy or you feel yourself a little bit anxious and you're used to smoking cigarettes, you can replace that with gum because chewing gum will give you some sort of shift or energy, allow you to have some sort of physical sensation in your mouth, much like cigarettes did, and can help with changing the habit of cigarettes. Healthy food instead of junk food. If you can't change the cue of getting hungry, because we are going to get hungry from time to time, but what you can do is change the routine. And instead of having, Snickers and potato chips hanging around, you can have carrot sticks and celery and other types of snacks that are much healthier snacks hanging around. And so you're changing the routine and ending up with a reward that's very similar as well. Your hunger is satisfied, but you're doing it in a different way. And that's a good way of replacing that habit. And meditation instead of alcohol. If you feel like you need to relax, then there are lots and lots of ways of shifting energy. Perhaps the right thing for you to do is develop the habit of meditation instead of the habit of taking a drink, or the habit of yoga, or many other types of stress release habits. So when you find yourself to be nervous and you want some sort of stimulation, maybe it's gum instead of cigarettes. When you find yourself to be hungry, maybe it's healthy food instead of junk food. And when you find yourself to be tense and nervous, maybe it's meditation instead of alcohol. We're replacing the routine. The cue remains the same. The reward is very similar, but the routine is a much better habit than the negative habit that we used to have. Another way of altering your habits is to change the reward, which is to reduce or eliminate the reward of a bad habit. One of the ways that we see this with people who are addicted to alcohol is they get a DUI, or they wake up in the gutter, or they somehow have repeated blackout instances, and all of a sudden that reward that they had from taking a drink is now replaced with an incredible negative reward of the shame and the embarrassment and the financial and legal challenges that they get into whenever they hit the rock bottom. You can also increase the reward of bad habits which can increase the craving. We'll talk about cravings in a second. But when you increase the reward of good habits, such as the sales bell, one of the things that IBM used to do that I encourage almost every sales department to do whenever they have a cubicle room full of salespeople is you have the sales bell, so that whenever somebody closes a big deal, they get to go over and ring the bell. When they ring the bell, everybody cheers for them because John or Susie or Stephanie or Marcel, just closed a really big deal. That can increase the cravings because you have increased the reward and massive encouragement around somebody who is doing something really positive. We do this all the time with our children and saying, that's a good boy or that's a good girl. You did a really good thing. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for helping mommy by carrying your dishes to the table. Thank you for opening the door. Thank you for being quiet when we ask you to be quiet. We give people massive encouragement. We increase the reward, and it increases the strength of the habit. The last way is to change the craving itself. One of the ways that this is not talked about in the book, but one of the things that I want to add because I found it to be so successful in my life, is to reduce the sensitivity of the system. If you find yourself to be tense and nervous, maybe you need to get more sleep. If you find yourself to be hungry all the time, maybe it's a time to drink more water. I talk about this a lot in my online presence called The Levels of Creation as the law of empowerment. When we increase our power and strength in one area of our life, it increases our self-image and self-esteem and our sense of empowerment, which can transfer into other areas of our life as well. So if we want to reduce the sensitivity of the system, if we want to reduce our anxiousness, then one of the things that we can do is increase our personal sense of self-esteem by giving ourselves something to be proud of and to be grateful for in other areas of our life. One of the ways that you can also change the craving is to reduce the memory of the reward. So, for example, when it comes to quitting smoking, if you can quit smoking for 3 or 4 or 5 days, not only will you eliminate a lot of the physical addiction that comes with nicotine, but you also eliminate the memory of the reward. You just can't remember what it feels like to smoke a cigarette. Maybe you can't remember what it feels like to have a drink. Or you can't remember what it feels like to do something else that is a negative habit. And the longer that you go without that habit, and the longer that you go without that reward, you're reducing the memory of the reward, which I think can reduce the craving a lot as well. One of the points they make in the book, which I think is a very good point, is to watch out for stress, because many people can, through the power of their own willpower or having not done something for a while, reduce the memory of the reward and reduce the craving. But when you get into periods of stress, then the basal ganglia, the lizard brain, starts to take over a little bit, and you'll find that old habits that you thought that you had replaced or that you thought that you had eliminated may really emerge themselves again. So somebody that used to drink, that quit drinking for 5 or 10 or 20 years, if they find themselves in a time of deep stress, they may find that that old habit hasn't quite been eliminated yet and hasn't quite been replaced yet and starts to come back. One of the questions we oftentimes ask ourselves is how long does it take to replace a habit? And the old common knowledge used to be 21 days, 3 weeks to 6 weeks, something like that. I've heard that for many, many years of it taking 21 days to replace a habit. But in studies that were done and documented in this book, that they can say that it's an average of 66 days, which is a long time. 66 days is 9 weeks, 9.5 weeks. And in fact, the data that they showed said that new habits could be formed in from 18 to 254 days. I can't imagine what kind of habit it took to form in 254 days, but I'm guessing it was something that was not very easy to do at all. And as it turns out, a lot depends on your ability to have great willpower, your own personal strength, because willpower is your ability to control your urges, which is to say control your habits. Of when you sense that you're being triggered, to say, no, I'm not going to have that routine anymore. I feel like taking a drink, but I'm not going to. I feel like sleeping in, but I'm going to get up and exercise. I'm going to resist the urge for some other different routine based upon the cues that I have, and I'm going to focus my time and energy on doing that which I know is best for me in the long term. As it turns out that willpower is an inexhaustible resource, and in this book, they quoted the same survey that was in the book Switch that we reviewed some time ago, which was not a survey, but rather an experiment, a psychological experiment, of where they determined that willpower was indeed an inexhaustible resource. So you have to watch out for your willpower and maybe only change one habit at a time if it does in fact require willpower of you to resist the urge and resist the subconscious program that's running in your mind to do a specific routine whenever a specific trigger or cue is encountered. But unfortunately, willpower is also a resource that you can increase. When you practice taking risks, when you practice controlling your urges, you can increase your capability to take risks and to resist those urges later on in your life. So far, we've been talking a lot about habits in the personal sense, but habits can also be a big part of your business. Why is it important for you to have habits in your business? It's because they're automatic and immediate. So, for example, if you can employ the habit in your business to respond with great courtesy and compassion whenever you have an upset customer, as we talked about in one of our previous office hours, you can instill that behavior throughout your organization and it becomes very immediate. So that any time you get a call from an upset customer or somebody's upset at the counter in your business, you happen to have a retail presence or a face-to-face presence with your customers, you can immediately go into stoplight mode or red light mode and offer your compassion and offer your courtesy and ask that person to tell you more about it and offer an apology. You can get into that, and that's a very, very good habit to form in your business, is the habit of handling upset customers in a very professional and courteous way. One of the things that you can do at your business is focus on what he calls keystone habits, which are habits that generate a lot of other habits. For example, if you and the other executives at your company decide that we're going to want to instill the habit of dressing sharply, and you begin to show up every day dressed very well in a business suit, whether that be, or business attire, whether that be as a man or a woman in your business, looking sharp, that can not only form the habit of looking sharp at your business, but it can be a keystone habit, one that generates other habits as well. Because looking sharp can immediately begin in having the habit of organizing well. So if you yourself are looking sharp, then maybe you want your desk to look sharp. Maybe you want the reception area to look clean as well. We become organized based upon just the simple habit of dressing sharp, that can cascade. That energy of being organized can go out through other organizations or the parts of your organization too. He talked about the story of Paul O'Neill, the former Secretary of the Treasury under the Bush administration, who was a celebrated manager and a leader in a lot of different organizations. He formed the habit, I think it was Alcoa Aluminum where he was. He formed a lot of very good habits by focusing on the keystone habit of safety. He decided that the number one thing that he was going to do was focus on safety at the company. And as it turns out, that focusing on safety got the unions to be talking to management a lot better, because everybody could agree that safety was very, very important. And in the process of cleaning up their act from a safety point of view, they started putting a lot of other disciplined procedures in place. It became a keystone, a way into changing a lot of other routines and procedures and processes at the company, just focusing on doing things which would increase the habit of safety. It worked extremely well. And as we previously talked about, customer interactions, or developing the habit of being very professional and courteous towards your customer under all circumstances, can cascade into other areas of the business as well. If we're courteous with our customers, then maybe we're courteous with each other. When we treat our customers with respect and kindness, maybe we treat each other at the company, our suppliers, our fellow employees, our contractors, our investors, other people at the company with great courtesy and kindness as well. What's key here is the repetition from the role models. The role models are the people that we look up to, and we all have this ingrained craving to be accepted and to belong at companies, to have jobs that are safe and secure. So we pay attention to what our role models are doing, what our executives are doing, and the leaders of the company are doing. And if they'll do something repeatedly over time, then you'll find that the entire business begins to adopt the habits that the role models employ over time, and you can change habits at the business very quickly if you have the role models at the company actually changing their habits. One of the things you can also do is have consistent negative rewards whenever you want to stop a behavior, that you just simply don't tolerate particular types of behaviors. Sometimes that means correcting a person right away, and sometimes that means letting the person go right away. That if you're going to be consistent in your intolerance of negative behaviors, it can really add to the power of positive habits at your company. And likewise, when you give enthusiastic positive rewards, like the sales bell when anybody closes a really big deal, like having the employee of the day or the employee of the month with the reserved parking place, you can give enthusiastic positive rewards, give other people the cravings for those same rewards, and you can form great habits at your company. So here's the bottom line. The bottom line is that you can consciously manage your personal habits and that you can consciously manage your business habits. There are things that you can do, changing the cues, changing the routines, changing the rewards, changing the cravings in order to form good habits and eliminate old habits, or at least replace old habits in both your personal life and your business life. And when you change your habits, you literally change your life. You can build a stronger business and become a better you simply through focusing on changing your habits day by day. In our agenda today, we talked about what are habits. We talked about habits in the brain. We talked about the habit loop. We talked about ways that you can change habits, both personally and professionally. We talked a bit about habits in business, and we focused on the bottom line. So here are the homework and the exercises I suggest for you. Do a personal habit inventory. Make a list of the habits that you have, both the good habits and the bad habits. And then do a business habit inventory. Think about what habits your business has. You can focus on the cues so that you can understand how these habits are triggered, both personally and professionally. And then I invite you to change or eliminate a habit this next week. If you've got a bad habit that you want to change or eliminate, then focus on doing so by changing the cues, changing the routines, changing the rewards, or changing the cravings, and install at least one good habit this next week too. Start something that you haven't done before, that's something that you've always been meaning to do, and install another good habit in your life. I know you'll be happier for having done it. As I was reviewing this presentation, I was also reviewing the presentation that we did 10 weeks or so ago on Office Hours number 56 on the book Switch, How to Change Things When Change is Hard by Chip and Dan Heath. I encourage you to review that as well, because that book talks a lot about how we essentially manage habits in an organization by focusing on what he called the rider, or what they called the rider and the elephant, or the mind, the mental aspects of making change, and the emotional aspects of making change too. So if this particular webinar has been significant for you when it comes to changing habits, and you're thinking about doing it in a cultural perspective in your business, then I encourage you to go back and listen to Office Hours 56, because that gives a lot of valuable information when it comes to changing things culturally at your business. And as always, we recommend that you get coaching and support in order to manage the processes that you have in order to help change your habits and install new habits in your personal life and your professional life. In just a few minutes, we will open up the lines for Q&A and coaching. I invite you to have comments and questions on the topic of the day and any other issues you want to talk about. Tell me what your biggest takeaways are and what insights that you gained from this presentation, and tell me what you're going to focus on next week. And if you've got a habit that you want to stop or change, or a habit that you want to install into your life, let me know what that is too. Here at the Hoyt Management Group, our support services include education, training, consulting, and coaching. We have growth management services as well, which is do it with you services, a service. Some of our services are where we teach you to do it by yourself and for yourself. And some of our services we do it with you, and other ones we actually do it for you. We have a wide variety and a big portfolio of products and services so we can support you in the ways that you want to be supported. We have some new programs coming out about the Awakened CEO for those of you who are not only building the business of your dreams, but you're also working actively to become the person that you want to become in life. We are in the process of designing and implementing a whole new portfolio of programs around the branding of the Awakened CEO. So stay tuned to that. Right now we've got the Awakened CEO personal mentoring programs in place, and in just the next few days we're going to be introducing a lot of additional programs as well. If you're interested in personal mentoring to become a better you, so that I can teach you some of the things that I've learned over time to help you become a wiser, kinder, more joyful, more powerful person, more loving person, then give me a call. I'd love to talk to you about our program. Our next office hours will be next week, February the 16th. I haven't decided on the topic yet. If you've got something that you would like for me to address, then go to paulsurvey.com and let me know. Of course, just pick up the phone or send me an email. And in between now and next week, I encourage you to do your homework. Change a habit, form a new habit, and let us know what you're doing. And with that, we will open it up to Q&A and coaching. Invite your comments and questions and discussion on the subject of the day, and then anything else that you want to talk about. Stephanie, do we have any questions for today?
We do. We got a couple hands up as well.
Wonderful.
You know, one of my biggest takeaways, you said something so powerful and about rewarding ourselves. And you know, it must have been a couple years ago where I finally figured out that I'm the type of person who is more motivated by the stick than the carrot.
Oh.
Have you heard of that? You're either motivated by the carrot or you're motivated by the stick, right?
Oh yeah.
And so for years I wanted to be the person who was motivated by the carrot. For some reason, I just wanted to be that person, and I kept beating myself up because I wasn't motivated by that. But once I learned that I was motivated by the stick and that it's okay to be motivated by the stick, things really became a lot easier for me. Can you talk about that a little bit?
I can. So one of the things that it may work for you and it may work for other people too is that, you know, if you consistently engage in a behavior that you're trying to change, maybe it's, you know, removing some sort of reward in your life. You know, this may be an example that's not very effective, but maybe you go to bed without dinner, or you decide that, you know, no, I'm not going to go to that movie this weekend because I didn't get all my homework done, or because I didn't get all my work done. It's just not right for me to continue to have, you know, these positive experiences when I didn't change in the way that I wanted to change. So, you know, I would certainly recommend caution when it comes to doing that, because I personally am not a fan of that kind of denial. But I can certainly see how it would pay big dividends. You know, in the classic case of weight management, you may decide that, you know, I'm not going to have any ice cream until I lose another couple of pounds. And then when I do lose those couple of pounds, then I'm going to reward myself by allowing myself to have ice cream. Sounds like a tactic that might work extremely well. I know I'm currently on the no ice cream in the evenings diet, and I look forward to, you know, losing another pound or two so I can reward myself with a big bowl of Rocky Road ice cream, which is one of my very favorites. So I think that that's an interesting combination of denying and rewarding yourself to help transform your habits and help increase your willpower and your sense of personal empowerment, which can help you increase your willpower and resist some of those urges that you have. Very interesting. Next question or topic.
Judy has her hand up.
Did she have a question, or shall we take her off mute?
Would you go ahead and take her off mute?
Judy, you're off mute, and welcome to the call today.
I just had a couple of comments, actually. I really liked the presentation you made and the flow of things. It's all very useful. I find in my practice a lot of people who, as you begin to talk to them about the changes and the sequence, it's something like, oh, but that's so hard. And I think that at that point people have to look at themselves and say, wait a minute, I'm saying I want it, then I'm saying it's hard. What is the resistance I have and why? What's getting in my way? As a way of really understanding themselves. And that may be the time when they need to contact you or their coach or their therapist, and not be afraid or ashamed to do that. You know, we need that mirror up there to see ourselves the way others see us instead of how we think we look, if we're really going to move forward with some of these very good things.
That is a great comment, Dr. Judy, and I didn't call you Dr. Judy before, but for those of you listening to the call, Dr. Judy is a psychiatrist. She's been a practicing psychiatrist for a long time and an emerging celebrity and authority figure in her field. We'd like to see her be, you know, a replacement in some ways, or at least a compliment to Dr. Phil out there as somebody who is well known throughout the United States as a fantastic psychiatrist with a lot of things to offer. So thank you for that offer. And if I may repeat that a little bit, if you find yourself, you know, having resistance and hesitation, if you find yourself having some real challenges when it comes to changing a habit that you know that you want to change, that you really want, that you really know that you need to change, then getting the support of other people, a coach, a therapist, or a psychiatrist can really be helpful. In some cases, you may find that the habit that you have has some chemical dependencies or some, you know, some wiring in your brain that can be best facilitated only through prescription drugs that a psychiatrist can offer you. But I've seen personally, you know, have paid great benefits in people's lives. So thank you so much for attending the call today, Dr. Judy, and for your fine comment there. Next comment or question, Stephanie.
Okay. What is the number one thing when developing or changing habits? The number one thing you should focus on.
The number one thing to me is the craving. Remember that diagram where we showed that the cravings is the fire. You know, it's the fuel between the fire. So focusing on what it is you want to accomplish, focusing on what you want to have in life, focusing on, you know, the negative impact of continuing a bad habit, focusing on that craving and reaching it, making it be emotional to yourself, I think is the number one thing. And in the book Switch, by the way, that I referenced earlier, he talks about the rider and the elephant and how you really have to focus on changing the path of the elephant, which is your emotional mind. That's the analogy that he uses. So it's really about emotions. It's about getting caught up in the excitement of running a marathon, or the excitement of feeling really good inside a bikini, or the excitement of being empowered in some way, and allowing yourself to really go to that place where you're experiencing that excitement with great passion and energy can be extremely helpful to you. So I think it's all about managing the cravings, increasing the cravings for the reward that comes from a good habit, and increasing the cravings to avoid a really bad habit can be. I think that's the number one thing, is to focus on the craving. Thank you. Next question.
What habits are you personally working on changing?
I have a lot of habits. One of the things that I did when I was writing this presentation and reading the books was do my own habit inventory. So I encourage each and every one of you to do your own habit inventory so that you can look at those things that you're doing in the morning, in the evening, throughout the middle of the day, upon occasion, however, and understand what your current habits are and what is cueing those or triggering those habits. The one habit that I'm working on right now is what I call going all the way. Those of you that know me and have listened to me before know that I'm a big fan of what I call the practice of awakening. I'm such a big fan of that I've written books on it. The Practice of Awakening 1 was in 2010 and the Practice of Awakening 2 in 2013. I'm writing the Practice of Awakening 3, and I'm a big fan of practicing shifting my energy every single day, many, many times throughout the day, whenever I recognize that I'm caught in just a little bit of shadow energy. Maybe I'm a little bit too serious. Maybe I'm even just a little bit grumpy, or I get cued or triggered in some way to be maybe a little angry, and I don't feel those things very much anymore because I've been practicing awakening for such a long time. But a couple of weeks ago when I started reading this book, I decided that the next habit that I am forming, that I'm really consciously working on, is going all the way. Whenever I decide that it's time to shift my energy, to not be satisfied with just letting go of the hurt or letting go of the despair, but rather moving all the way into this powerful, powerful, joyful energy, this powerful bliss and contentment, rapturous, joyful energy that I've learned to experience in my own life, and going there every single time that I shift my energy. And I got to tell you, I've been working on it for the last week or so, and it is a wonderful, wonderful habit. So that's my latest habit. My latest habit is when I sense that I am out of sorts in any way, when I'm experiencing any sort of shadow energy or even just a little bit of complacency, that I am shifting my energy all the way into this beautiful, beautiful state of consciousness and grace and bliss and contentment and rapturous joy that I have learned to experience in my lifetime. And I just love the fact that this book inspired me to instill this new habit in my life. So thanks for asking, Stephanie.
Not a problem. Got one more little observation here. This
Okay.
actually is from one of my books that I'm reading about habits, actually. And one of the things that the author reminds me is that the habits we make, or the changes, we make will not necessarily be perfect. So it's always, for me, it's about being better, not best. I'm not trying to be perfect. I'm just trying to be better. And whatever habits and new changes that I make, it's all about understanding that there's still room for improvement, but I am going down the right path.
I love that. And oftentimes forming new habits is just about making progress. That reminds me of, one of the things that I learned a long time ago was how to form habits. And the way that you form habits is by making the routine easy and enjoyable from the very beginning. So, for example, if you want to have the habit of exercise, it's real important for you not to start out with an extremely stressful exercise program, because it can feel good for, a day or two, but then your body starts to feel really tired, and there's a lot of people that canceled their gym memberships on the 1st of February because they started to go to the gym and they really pushed themselves very hard, and it got to be very uncomfortable, that the reward wasn't immediate. And because the reward wasn't immediate, and because the routine itself was so uncomfortable, they stopped. They just decided that, hey, this exercise isn't worth it. I'm not going to do it anymore. So when we focus on building habits, focus on establishing a routine that's very, very comfortable and very, very easy. If you want to work up to doing 50 push-ups a day, start with 5 or 10. Start with 5 or 10. Only go about 60 or 70% of the way to where you can go, so that you're not pushing yourself so much that you end up with the resistance of fatigue or pain that doesn't result in an immediate positive reward. One of the ways that I reward myself, by the way, is to set very simple goals. Like I want to work up to 50 push-ups a day, so this week I'm going to do 10 push-ups a day, and I'm going to reward myself when I have accumulated 50 push-ups for the week. And next week I'll increase that to 12 or 13, and the week after that I'll do it to 15, but I'll gradually increase the effort over time so I don't have any of the real pain associated with it, and develop the habit of doing push-ups, because that's what the most important thing is. So as you decide to form new habits, I encourage you to take the advice from Stephanie and from myself into thinking it's really just about establishing the habit, and it's about getting a little bit better every single day, so that over the course of a lifetime and over the course of many weeks or months, that habit can be installed into your system, and you can gain the lifetime benefits of having an extremely good habit. I have it just now at the top of the hour, so I'm going to call our office hours session to a close for the day. Thank you very much for attending. Review this one. Go back and listen to the office hours on Switch, office hours number 56, and you'll find a lot of powerful, valuable information about how you can change your habits and change your life. And until we talk again the next time, this is Paul Hoyt wishing you a most marvelous and prosperous day. Bye-bye.